The title of this conversation is going to be uncomfortable for some people to have found. Uncomfortable not because the situation it describes is shameful, but because finding it means the situation is real for them, and real situations carry a weight that hypothetical ones do not. I want to acknowledge that weight directly before I say anything practical, because the practical things I am going to say will land differently for someone who is carrying that weight than for someone who is watching out of curiosity or preparation. If you are 50 years old and you genuinely have no meaningful savings, no retirement account, no investment portfolio, no financial cushion beyond the next few months, then you are holding a specific kind of fear that is difficult to describe to someone who has not held it. It is not the fear of a single bad event. It is the ongoing, low-frequency, impossible to fully ignore awareness that the foundation you expected to have built by now does not exist, and that the years available to build it are fewer than the years it took to not build it. My name is Richard Harlow, and the first thing I want to say to anyone in that situation is this. The fear is real, the urgency is real, and neither of those things means the situation is hopeless. What they mean is that the situation requires a specific and honest response. Not comfort, not reassurance, not the motivational framing that makes difficult situations feel easier without making them easier, but a clear-eyed, practical, step-by-step understanding of what is actually possible from this specific starting point. That is what I intend to provide in the next several minutes. Not encouragement. A plan. The starting point for that plan is an accurate understanding of what no savings at 50 actually means, financially, as distinct from what it feels like emotionally. What it means financially is not that everything is lost. It means that you are beginning the serious accumulation phase of your financial life at a point when most people who began it earlier have a head start. That head start is real, and its absence is a genuine disadvantage that would be dishonest to minimize. But the disadvantage is specific and quantifiable, which means it is addressable in specific and quantifiable ways. A person at 50 with no savings does not have a permanent disability. They have a delayed start. And a delayed start with 15 years of working time remaining, at peak earning capacity, with children who are approaching or have reached financial independence, with housing costs that may be more stable than in earlier decades, and with the clarity of preferences that comes from half a century of lived experience. That is not a hopeless position. It is a constrained position that demands a specific set of responses that are different from what would be appropriate for someone at 30, or for someone at 50 with substantial assets already in place. I want to tell you about a man named Wendell. Wendell was 52 years old when he came to me, a logistics manager with a solid income and a specific and painful reason for his complete absence of savings. A divorce at 49 that had divided everything he had built, combined with 2 years of elevated personal expenses during the transition that had consumed what remained. Wendell was not irresponsible in the casual sense of the word. He had accumulated savings, contributed to a retirement account, made reasonable financial decisions throughout his 40s. What he had not done was build a financial structure independent enough of his specific living situation to survive the dissolution of that situation. When it dissolved, the structure dissolved with it. He arrived at 52 at what felt like zero, not because of consistent neglect, but because of a concentrated disruption at exactly the wrong moment, combined with insufficient structural independence that left him exposed. What Wendell and I built together over the following 2 years was not designed to make up for lost time in the way that phrase is usually understood. It was designed to use the specific advantages that his current position genuinely offered, and his current position did offer genuine advantages, as efficiently as possible over the 15 or so remaining working years he had. The first and most important of those advantages was income. Wendell's salary as a logistics manager was the highest it had ever been in his career. He had the professional seniority that comes from 25 years in a field, the expertise that commands compensation beyond what an entry-level professional could command, and the stability of an established career that does not require the kind of exploratory spending, professional development, career experimentation, image maintenance that earlier career stages often require. His income was substantial, and for the first time in his adult life, it was relatively undivided by competing financial demands of the scale that had existed when his children were younger and his marriage was active. This was the single most important financial fact of his situation. Not his absence of savings, his presence of income. The first decision we made together was about the savings rate, the proportion of Wendell's monthly income that would be directed towards savings and investment beginning immediately, before any other financial decision was made with his paycheck. Not the amount remaining after spending was covered, the amount that would be set aside first, automatically, as the non-negotiable first claim on the monthly income. For someone in Wendell's situation, high income, reduced competing demands, genuine urgency about building a financial foundation, this rate needed to be meaningfully higher than what would be appropriate for someone without his constraints. We settled on a rate that was substantially higher than what financial planning guides typically suggest as a reasonable savings rate, for the straightforward reason that Wendell's situation was not typical, and a typical rate would not produce sufficient results on his timeline. This was not comfortable. It required changes to spending patterns that had established themselves during the years of higher competing demands, and that now needed to be actively rather than passively reconsidered. But it was honest, and it was the only response to his specific situation that would actually produce a meaningfully different outcome over 15 years than the situation he was in. The second decision was about the structure of the savings, where the money went, and what it was doing once it was set aside. For someone beginning serious accumulation at 52, the investment framework needs to balance two objectives that are somewhat in tension: the need for growth on a relatively short timeline, and the need for income generation that will eventually replace labor income. We address this by dividing the savings into two streams. One directed toward a tax-advantaged retirement account, invested in low-cost, broadly diversified equity funds, oriented toward growth, and one directed toward income-producing assets, initially dividend-paying equities, that would begin building the foundation of an income stream even while the accumulation was still in its early stages. This dual-stream approach produced something that mattered not just financially, but psychologically. Wendell began receiving actual dividend deposits within the first year, which provided concrete evidence that the system was working, that the accumulation was not merely a number growing in an account, but a structure beginning to generate real output. The third decision concerned Wendell's primary professional asset, which was the one resource he had that someone at 30 building from zero would not have in the same form. His 30 years of logistics expertise, his network of professional relationships, his demonstrated track record in managing complex supply chain situations. These were assets that had market value in forms beyond his primary employment. We explored these forms methodically, consulting engagements during vacation time that utilized his expertise in ways his employer either did not need or did not mind. A mentoring relationship with a smaller firm that generated modest income and maintained professional engagement outside his primary role, and eventually a structured arrangement with 2 industry contacts that provided regular advisory income. None of these supplemental activities was transformational individually. Together, they increased his monthly deployable capital by an amount that, directed into the savings structure consistently over the following years, meaningfully accelerated the trajectory. What Wendell had at 62, when we last reviewed his full position, was not what he would have had if the divorce had not happened and the prior accumulation had continued. That gap was real and would never be fully closed. What he had was a financial position that he described with a precision I found characteristic of his professional temperament. A structural foundation that would support the next 30 years with security, not with the comfort of abundance, but with genuine security, which is a different thing. Not everything he might have wanted, everything he genuinely needed, and more than he had believed was possible when he sat across from me at 52 with nothing. The specific question I want you to hold with you before you do anything else, before you look at any product, any rate, any investment option, is this one. What is your actual deployable monthly income? Not your gross income, not your net income. The amount remaining after every genuine, non-negotiable monthly expenditure is covered. That number, precise, calculated against your actual account activity, rather than estimated from memory, is the only number that actually matters in the beginning. Because everything that is possible from your current starting point is built from that number, directed consistently and intelligently over the years that remain. Know it exactly. Write it down today, not next week. Because the plan begins with that number, and the plan cannot begin without it.